and even more special for our ISO students. And this was an idea that we had a couple of months ago, and I couldn't have thought of anyone else better to kick us off than Marza Wilks, who is a phenomenal cellist. And I'm very lucky and fortunate to call her a friend. And she's going to be working with some of our symphony cellos that I'm really excited that they get a chance to also show off some solo repertoire. So starting us off, we have Brayton Neal. Brayton, if you can just introduce the piece that you're playing and then hop into it for us.
Okay. I'm going to be playing the Haydn cello concerto, the first movement, and see. Yeah, I'll just hop into it. Okay, so then I have a few measures of rest. I'll switch to the next page.
We'll pause right there, actually.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much. I You know what? People have, well, cellists always say, it seems like, at least when I was in college, people were like, I'm so tired of the Haydn C major. I think this is one of the most wonderful pieces that's ever been written for cello. It's so charming. And the first thing that I want to say is you look like you're too serious about this. Like you look like you're really unhappy playing this piece. And that's, you know, part of just what happens when we're focusing so hard. But we also want to remind ourselves that we're having a good time. This is joyful. This is really fun. And so the way that I really want to focus on working on that with you is through your bow stroke for the first thing. I have like 2 or 3 main points that we'll touch on, but we're going to start with the bow stroke. Oftentimes I see you using quite a lot of bow for 16th notes, and it's kind of making it sound quite muddy. And when I say muddy, I mean kind of the idea of thinking about white noise, you know, white noise between notes. That's something that my old teacher, Paul Katz, would get on my case about, was hearing the noise between the notes. So we're going to try to eliminate that, and that's by using less bow, clearer articulation. One of the things I notice is your hand tends to kind of adjust a lot while you're playing, rather than keeping kind of one centered, stable position. It kind of ends up going to the outside. So I want to kind of focus on that. Just starting from the beginning, I want you to kind of take a deep breath, give yourself 3 seconds to really find your center. You don't have to jump in to this right away. You don't just have to dive off the diving board. Take a second, think about the character that you want, and try again from the beginning. And do the first 2 phrases. I'll stop you. Great. Okay. So right there. I want you, as just an experiment, I'm not suggesting you actually do this. I want you to play it ricochet once. Just try it. Great. Now do it on down bows. Challenge yourself.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's more for like just a practice and exercise. Great. Okay, so now obviously we're not going to play it this way necessarily, but that kind of uplifted kind of sound is what I want to get out of your playing, rather than like kind of heavy and very like pesante. I want this to be more joyful, sparkling. Can you try again now? Great. So now I'm going to add one more thing, which is get closer in to more towards the center of your bow. Like use that B natural to get yourself a little farther down, because you'll have a little bit more control in this upper part of the bow rather than right at the tip.
I feel like that was more heavy, like you were saying before. I kind of lost the lightness.
Yeah, I gave you a grain of salt and you brought a salt lick. That's okay. So you went all the way down to like the bottom of the bow. Not much farther than you were, just maybe 2 inches. So aim for here rather than doing those notes up here. Okay. Yeah, even more farther out. Right there. So right in this part of the bow. Because what I'm seeing is, I'm going to lower my camera as well. Hopefully you can see the tip of my bow. Yeah, great. So what I'm seeing from you is, which is kind of limited because our arm can't support and be flexible as much. You're in this middle area, you have slight, you have more malleability and like loosey-goosey arm. Try one more time. That already sounds just so much happier than the first time. It just really sounded like you were like, I'm going to play this and you're gonna like it. This sounded much more like joyful and really, I always think of like a court jester in the opening of this piece, you know, that type of joyfulness. So let's do that again now. Now do the first 2 or 3 phrases and I'll stop you again. Great. So obviously this is not something that's immediately easy to do. So I will let you percolate that thought in your mind. The next thing is I want you to be very aware of your up bows throughout this piece. Oftentimes it's kind of starting to sound like there's a train whooshing by, you know, that kind of sound, the swell that we don't want. And I think that's just a lack of listening to those up bows. So I want you to play it again and really make sure any of these up bows that you're using as a whole bow, you do not allow yourself to give in to that kind of swell because it kills the phrase. Can you try the opening again? Yeah, so specifically, the difference is the swell makes it sound so much more lugubrious. This is my word of the week, lugubrious. So you don't want that kind of feeling, you know, let it be charming, it all ties into the same thing. And that's all about making sure that you're not using too much bow in certain places. One more time. Great. Okay. So throughout the entire movement, I want you to pay special attention to your up bows, especially whenever you're using them for 1 note, 2 notes for a whole bow. Okay. So that's one thing that I really want you to pay attention to, which brings me to kind of recapping back to this idea of white noise and sound between notes. You are obviously, we can see you're very agile on the fingerboard, which is great. There are maybe some fingerings that I would rethink because I'm hearing the shifting. And that really takes away from the character of the piece. So anytime that you've got like, I think you've got a big shift before you do where is that shift that you do? You do it down here and then a giant shift up here. Where is that? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Do that again. I need some sort of, I need some convincing on that fingering. Otherwise I will suggest another one.
All right. I'll start.
Yeah, do you hear the noise?
Yeah, it was the sort of necessity of doing this up sort of in thumb position, and wanting that sort of grand like ending to. And that was, I guess, the best I could come up with.
Have you been given the fingering down here? Sorry, I haven't played this in a minute. I like that one because it takes away the giant amount of ring that you get from playing it down here, which is just natural ring. It also has a brighter sound, which I think matches this character more to do it down here. So try it. I don't know if you've tried that already, but my biggest issue is that if I have to hear your shift, it sounds like you're working way harder than you might actually be. And it detracts from what's actually happening in the musical phrase, right? So, and that's kind of a thing that I noticed in general as I heard a lot of your shifts, which is just synchronicity between bow stopping, left hand, right? So can we do this whole middle passage right here again with whatever fingering you want, but really making sure your left hand is ahead of your right.
Sorry, that was a new finger for me.
Yeah, of course. So I would suggest once you're already up here, just stay here. and then you're already there.
Yeah.
If you do that fingering. Yeah. Why did you know?
You might not be a fan of that, yeah.
I am so okay. Here's the thing. I love a big shift. I love when I can hear, the range of the shift, but not in Haydn, because it needs to be crisp and clean. And I think that's something better suited for something like Elgar or even Rococo if you want. But this is, to me, please don't do that shift, or at least think about not doing that shift. But the big thing is the upside to this type of fingering, especially for you, I can see that you're very agile with your thumb position, is it eliminates all of that extra noise. And you want this to sound easy. You want this to sound like you're just kind of rattling it off. This is virtuosic, right? That, to me, is much more impressive than seeing you shifting all over the place and having it sound muddier. And Meg, if you'll tell me about time, I'm sure, right? Because I can keep going forever. Okay, we got 2 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna just skip to my next point, which is vibrato. I'm not getting a huge range in your vibrato. That's okay, but the biggest thing that I want you to think about is convenience vibrato versus intentional vibrato. I see a lot of notes that you kind of just vibrate because it's your second finger and you probably feel really comfortable on a second finger. But then there's like a longer note that would really be well suited for vibrato to help the phrase flow, and it's dead. So I want you to really be thinking about intentional vibrato, not convenient vibrato. You're supporting the phrase, not your own like technical abilities, right? So let's pick, let's just do from, go from there. Yeah, let's pause right there. So I heard like, and it's purely just a convenience vibrato that I see you doing, because you can vibrate that finger probably very easily, but it killed the phrase. And then use your vibrato like an ornamentation, right? Yeah. So the other spot is the resolution from that F sharp. What I heard was, right? Yeah. That's like such an important note, that F sharp resolving to the G. It's so necessary. Bring out some vibrato there. Same phrase, and then I think we might have to move on. Go start from the same spot. Great. Now finish the last one. Oh, okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. So the biggest things that I want you to think about is really just eliminating white noise within shifting. If you can convince me of your shifting, I'm sold. But as soon as the shifting gets in the way of the phrase, and it's the same idea, the use of bowings, if it breaks the phrase, not worth it. Use of vibrato, if it takes away from the actual direction, then it kills the mood. So I want you to be really picky with yourself, because there's no doubt in my mind that you can practice these runs and nail them. It's taking it to that next level of really building a phrase to make it really well honed. So anyways, there you are. Thank you so much. It was really nice to hear you play. It feels so weird to not be in, it feels so weird to not be in a hall where I can properly applaud and everybody can hear, you can hear everybody clapping, but thank you so much.
All right, and I'm gonna quickly introduce Eli, who's our next cellist up. So Eli, introduce yourself to Marza and the piece that you're gonna play for us.
Hi, my name is Eli Jort. I will be playing the Allemande from the 5th Bach Cello Suite. So yeah. Can I start?
Give me 5 seconds. I'm gonna pull out my non-tuned down score. So give me 5 seconds. And by 5 seconds, I mean maybe 10.
Yeah, I haven't tuned the strings down. So.
No problem. Okay, I've got my music ready to go when you are. Great. Thank you, Eli. I know this. I'll say it again. It feels so strange to not be in a hall. So, you know, we're doing the best we can. Let me very quickly tune down. The beauty of geared pegs is quite a bit easier. So the biggest thing that I am gathering from this is that it doesn't quite feel like a dance yet. And by a dance, I mean, I couldn't even quite find a comfortable walking tempo to this. So I want, normally if I was with you, I would have you put down your cello and stand up and literally sing this out loud and walk to it. But I'm gonna have you just do, like, you can't see my pants very well, right, left, to a steady beat. And I want you to sing, and I'm the worst singer in the world. So you do not have to even sing the correct pitches. You can be like, da ya, da 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 dum, ba dum, ba da, da 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 dum, ba dum, Ba-ya-da-da-dum. Because I think what you might find is you're playing it like this. Ba-ya-da-da-da-dum. Ba-da. Like much slower than you're actually anticipating. And I get it. This is, I think, arguably the hardest movement of this suite, because there's so much to pack in, and we'll talk about, you know, chord progressions later, but there's already so much information here that it's very easy to get slow and overly somber. So I want you to try this little exercise, and I will mute myself so you don't hear me pawing along.
Bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, dun. Okay, I got lost.
Yes, this is why, because these measures are quite pulled out. What I want you to do right now for 10 seconds for the first, let's say up until measure 10, I want you to write in all the big beats.
Okay.
So like big slashes for every single beat, because that makes it a lot easier to do this type of exercise.
Okay, I got a lot in.
Great. Now try that same exercise. Now that you see where they are.
Bum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, dun, dun. Da-da-dun, dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Okay,
This is hard. This is hard. I'm glad you're doing this. And I know it's uncomfortable, and it's really uncomfortable to sing or whatever, enunciate this part. But I think the biggest thing that I think you're realizing is that there are quite a few notes that you're stretching to be quite a bit longer than they can actually fit in the beat. And one of the biggest things that I listen for in Bach is to make sure that it's always flowing and that there's no slowing down in unnecessary places. Just like what we were talking about earlier with Brayton, convenience fingerings, convenience bowings, convenience rhythms even take away from the music, right? So we want to really make sure that we're doing our part by playing the rhythms correctly, playing things in tune, all of those things that we do. So the first thing that I want to think about is, as you even sang it, I heard you go, ba-da, ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-da. And I hope you can hear over the microphones, my accents that I made. But keep in mind, this is still all part of one phrase. So the chord progression, 1, 4, 5, 6, 1 goes to at least the downbeat of the second measure, the second full measure. And I'm hearing it being broken up. So. So it's more flowing rather than having specific jabs, or those jabs being made out of too much bow for certain things. You do not have to go the tempo that I played, especially if you haven't practiced it, no worries. But I want you to be aware of your unintentional phrasing, meaning your accents on notes that you might not want to. So do you want to just try playing the first phrase again?
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to pause you right there, because I've like, Bach is one of those pieces that you will be on a journey with your entire life. And it's certainly been a love-hate journey for me over the years. So the things that I've thought about in this are, of course, this idea of double dotting and making these 16ths more like 30 seconds. I'm hearing a mixture from you. And do you know what I mean by like double dotting?
Like the like the 16th notes coming after the chords.
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes I hear you doing it very deliberately. And then there are other times where I'll hear. And then it's not consistent. Now, of course, you can pull some of them a little bit longer, but to me, it sounds a little bit unintentional. So I want you to do it again and really, really hold yourself to like one steady beat the whole time. You can, and I'm a big fan of like the heel lift and like a little bit of a sway if you want for that internal rhythm, but really hold yourself accountable for choosing one, either double dotting it or not double dotting it for these first two phrases. Great, I'm gonna stop you right there. Do you have measure numbers?
Yeah.
Great, measure 6.
Yeah.
I want you to take a look at this. So this order of like chord progressions is very interesting because at the downbeat of measure 7, we've got a 4. So I forgot what bowing I do there. I really want you to lead to that downbeat of measure 7, but what I'm hearing is a lot of like effort on some of these passing tones. So the notes that are just kind of there to help you move to the next chord, I think are getting a little too much attention. And by attention, I mean just altogether time and heaviness. Of course, we're still going to keep it within the beat, but specifically making sure that it's also, once again, not convenience fingerings that are making this more difficult for you to get to the 4 chord.
Okay.
Can you just do, and back up to measure 5, because it's a little bit easier from there. Better. Okay, so the second beat of measure 6 was already far better. What I heard in the third beat, I heard a swell in that. Sorry, I'm quite flat on that, but does that make sense? So instead of like it getting slower and heavier on those 30 seconds, it's flowing. It's very much flowing. Can you try that again? Measures 5 to the downbeat of 7. Great. Okay. This already sounds more flowing. The next thing I'm going to say, which was actually perfect timing, is you found yourself like stuck up here in the bow. Don't do that. Just whatever you do, I don't like, just make your way back to a comfortable position, because the second that we lose the ability to have those really nuanced sounds and we're like out here and we're kind of just like, we're stuck, it kills the phrase, right? So all about like getting somewhere comfortable that you can adjust a little bit better. And I know this is a hard one. So really, really try to save the bow on the downbeat of measure 7. And what I do, I'm trying to remember the finger, I'm trying to remember. I don't do those, I don't do that second beat of measure 7. I don't do that as separate bows. I do that as a slur. So that by the time I get to the downbeat of 8, I'm on a nice juicy down bow for that 7 chord. right? So find a bowing, or if you're going to choose to do separate bows, make your way back, but I don't want to hear that you're making your way back, right? So I don't want to hear like a swell as you get closer to the frog, but try something. Try 3 different bowings. Take your time, like self-practice right now, just that measure. And I'll mute myself so you don't hear me. Right, exactly. So this is going to take like quite a few different trials and errors, and I'm definitely not one of those people that thinks Bach needs to be played this way. You absolutely need to do this bowing. To me, that doesn't really make sense. So you can experiment with your bowings to find something that is really beautiful to your ear and to the phrase. I'm trying to remember the bowing that I did, but the most important thing is I use some of these notes and give myself a little air in the bow. So I use air in my bow, so it's not, you don't have to have your bow totally glued in the whole time. If you're wanting some of these up bows to not swell, you can add some of that air, like that lifting under the bow kind of air sound. Does that make sense? Or
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
yeah, cool. I want to make sure that I was about to say like some bubble analogy, and I was like, that's not going to help. So, it is what it is. So when you practice and experiment with different bowings, always be thinking of like the air that's underneath the bow to help you, because one of the other things that makes the especially minor Bach make it sound so heavy is when we're not super conscious of like our bow and where we are in the bow, how much weight we're putting in the bow for every note. Does that make sense? Yeah. Meg, how are we doing on time?
I think we're ready to go for Caitlin.
Great, wonderful. Well, it was such a pleasure to hear you, Eli. I know I gave you a lot of things to think about. One thing that I would suggest everybody do in this masterclass, and to everybody who's sitting out there watching this on YouTube, analyze your Bach. Analyze your Bach. It will just like kind of open your eyes. And this was something I really didn't want to do in college because it was just felt like more like music theory homework. It will pay off to see the chord progressions, and that will really help. So that's just my little piece about that. Thank you so much, Eli.
That was great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
All right. And next up we have Caitlin. So Caitlin, if you can introduce yourself and the piece that you're playing.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I'm playing the Gulterman Fourth Concerto in G major, and I'll play the first 2 pages. Should I just start whenever?
Beautiful. Thank you, Caitlin. Once again, we're going to do this kind of bizarre applause or lack of applause. So I love this piece. I actually didn't learn this until I had a student work on it a couple years ago. And gosh, I love Gulterman. It's really just really charming music again. And I think there are a couple of things that I want to pull out of you, which is kind of, once again, like a happy, carefree kind of a sound, because it sounds so serious. Like you sound
I'm just
like you're focusing
so nervous.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like, I'm just shaking. I'm sorry.
Gosh. Okay. No, you're fine. First of all, no need to apologize. I have been there. Master classes are always scary, so it's totally fine. So just take a second to shake out, warm up those fingers a little bit, get the blood flowing. Maybe just play from the beginning again. Now that you've gotten the hard part out of the way, I want you to play the first two phrases and really just kind of transform yourself and just kind of take yourself into the music.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there. Great. So the first thing that I want to work on with you a little bit is your vibrato. You have a very tense and fast sounding vibrato. You might not actually be feeling tense, but it kind of sounds tense to me. And of course, we are via several microphones and it's online. And of course, I'm not hearing the actual tone that you're producing, but I do want to like focus on relaxing that vibrato a little bit, specifically on your fourth fingers, which is one of the hardest fingers to vibrate. And I will be the first to admit, I cheat on my fourth finger vibrato and I really use my third finger. I use my third finger to my full advantage to help really support my pinky. So let's focus on that. And let's pick like just a G in fourth position. And I want you to do this very annoying siren sounding. What I want you to really focus on is making sure that you're not like turning a doorknob type of vibrato, but really having it come from your forearm, the joints from like here to your wrist and your fingers. Your fingers are an extension of the motion coming from your forearm. So it's really more like you're petting a dog versus like turning a doorknob. Can you just try that on just a G and really slow, like obnoxiously slow? Okay, great. I'm still seeing a lot of this kind of, and I'm exaggerating, of course, it doesn't look like that. I'm still seeing a lot of rotational vibrato versus more like hinged. And so this time when you do it, I want you to think about your thumb, you know, in the crook of the cello and not squeezing. It's just there for balance. Try again. Great. Okay, now let's do threes. So really da 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 da, and make sure that you don't go higher than your pitch. The second that you go, everything sounds out of tune. So make sure you're only going up to that note. Good. You're getting a little bit sharp, but that's okay. Now let's go to 4 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really, da 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 da. Great. Can you try to do 5? Hippopotamus, hippopotamus, hippopotamus. I know that's one's a weird one to think about. Great. And now just, and while you do this, make sure that I'm putting my fingers over these strings. So just to kind of show you that I'm not clumping them with my other fingers. You do not have to do this. Making sure that you're not holding tension in your pointer or your middle finger either. Okay, great. So the first thing that I noticed that you did differently is your elbow went up. Your elbow like lifted higher than it had been. Do it again and really allow your arm to sink and don't let that elbow creep up.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so this is going to be like an ongoing practice. I am still, of course, probably will never be fully satisfied with my own 4th finger vibrato because 4th finger is, of course, our weakest finger, but definitely spend time working on this, specifically the difference between like oscillations of 4 at a time to 6 at a time, because that's that weird timing where that's when our hand tends to do this jerky thing. I don't know if you ever like experience that when you're practicing, you're like, okay, my vibrato feels like very much robotic and it's more tense than loose. So I want you to really focus on that because in, let's say, I don't have measure numbers for the whole thing, but once you've entered measure 5, I need that G to be really soaring. And the second that it's clenched with a tight vibrato, the phrase dies. I'm all about this idea of supporting the phrase, not killing the phrase, right? So making sure that your vibrato is soaring so that it helps propel the phrase, and it also just allows the ring to naturally come out. You don't want the vibrato to kill it. So
Yeah.
let's start from the 4th measure once you've entered. So the D. Great. I'm going to stop you. So 3rd measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your 7th measure, once you've entered, do you notice how on that B natural there's a tenuto mark? Do you have a tenuto mark in yours?
No.
I have like I have a little.
Oh,
line
I see it. I
over-
see it. I see it.
Yeah, you kind of just blew past that. I want a little more vibrato on that note. I'm fine if you like steal time and or borrow time, let's call it borrow time, and return the time later if you can really make sure to bring out those tenutos, because there's a tenuto there, 1 line below it, 4 measures later, there's a tenuto on that low A as well. And that's because these are the notes, it's like a descent, right? But those notes help propel, you know, the ornamentation upwards. So those notes are the most important. So go from wherever you want. How about the 5th measure once you've entered?
From the G.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry.
Yes,
I feel like I'm
that's
taking
hard.
too long.
Yeah, now you've swung a little bit the other way, and that's always what's going to happen, and that's fine. But I'd rather you swing the other way a little bit right now just to practice bringing that note out, and you can always give that time back later once you've practiced actually bringing out that note. But yes, you're on the right path there. So the next thing is these shifts between 4 and 4. I hate 4th finger shifts, 4th finger down to another 4th finger or going up. I would personally just change the fingering to 4, 1, 4, 2, and then shift back. You could even do, something that eliminates any shift from 4 to 4, because I don't want to hear, that's that white noise that we were talking about, white noise between the notes. We don't want that. It makes it sound sloppy, even if you've practiced it a million times, right? So maybe explore.
You said 4
Sorry.
1.
Yeah. So you know what measure I'm in, right? This is after the
7.
well, yeah. Yeah, I would do 4 1 4 2 and then shift back.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because there's like almost no way under a slur to hide that unless you add in tenuto into the bow, which then kills the phrase, right, in a different way. So I am fully supportive of you changing fingerings if it can help support what you actually want to do musically. But 4/4 does not serve that, I don't think. So let's go from one measure before that. This D. Sorry, I never do that as a half note, but it is a half note. That's already much better. Yeah, keep going for now. I'll tell you in a second. Great. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. So I wonder if you have the same edition as I do, but whatever, it's fine. We don't need to worry about that. So that's the end of the phrase. Then we begin again. I'm just hearing you kind of plow through the phrases, and you're not actually hearing, I'm not hearing the ends of the notes, ends of the phrase. Kind of just sounds like it's all mushed together. So for you especially, I feel like very much like I was you when I was a kid, or whatever your age. You might not be like a young child, obviously, but what I would do is just get through everything, because I know I would be technically proficient at it, and I can do that. But really listening, and I want you to swing to the opposite direction, and I want you to really take time where you think it's going to feel exaggerated, because it will. It absolutely will feel exaggerated. But for now, I really want you to take like an obnoxious amount of time. Like it really, not ever a way you would play it, but just so that you can kind of hear these different stacked phrases.
Okay, the fourth line, right?
Yes. Great. Yes. Yes, we're already there. Now, of course, now we've got these ends of phrasettes, or whatever you want to call them. It's part of a grander thing now. So I need more support from your crescendo and your bow speed with those crescendos to help that phrase sound a little more complete.
Okay.
Do it again. Yes, that's already sounding much more musical. Now, okay, so there's, I have, you could choose to do, you could do the 4, but that shift has to be really fast so that you don't hear, right? So it has to be either a fast shift, or you could do first finger and kind of do an over. I'm exaggerating all my motions so you can see it over the internet, but you can choose one of those, but you don't want, right? Because that just sounds careless, even if you're not meaning to be, right? Mm-hmm. So try that again, whatever fingering you want with all of these things, the phrasing, a shift up to that high A, which I like to do as a harmonic, you know, just making sure that all it all flows. So let's start from the fourth line again. Great. Okay. Yes. So work on that shift, or however you're going to get up to that. It needs to sound a little bit more carefree because it's about to get really somber in the one line down, right? Just a few measures later, then we're entering a whole new level of minor and somber and deep tone that we want. So this first one, we really want to be carefree. So now going back to this idea of vibrato, and very much like kind of what we were talking about earlier today, which is the idea of the phrasing, vibrato, all of that stuff coming together and making sure you're not vibrating out of convenience. So what I'm hearing is, but it's really, these are like mini resolutions. So you can choose to stress certain notes if you don't want to vibrate it, that's fine, but you can't kind of just vibrate based on what feels good to you in that moment, right? Does that make sense? So, or if you don't want to do vibrato, you have to bring it out with your bow, one or the other. So really intentional phrase creation. So one more time, I know you're probably sick of this fourth line, but let's start there. Great, pause right there. So second page now, piano dolce. It sounded exactly the same. And I know that via these different mics, there's only so much that we can hear, but I would expect to hear a difference between forte and piano dolce, right? So I really want you to transform. You've got not even a second to really transform this. Then you've got your crescendo, right? So it's really bringing out every little marking that's in there. So can we start, let's see, start on the last line of page 1 into the first line of page 2.
Okay.
And I really want to hear that contrast. Yeah, exactly. We're there. I want you to really exaggerate every dynamic you do. I think you're very much, the extremes are scary, but sometimes it's really good to push to that extreme just to know what your color options are and even technical options are. So really being aware of those options that you can utilize. It's like you've got all these different tools and techniques, and now that you've got them, you can pick them out and use them as you will. But it's better to know what your range is before you can just say, yeah, that's good enough, because this is just absolutely filled with so much detailed information in his markings of dynamics, tenuto markings, swells, different articulations. There's a lot of stuff to put into this music, so don't let yourself get too comfortable. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Meg, how are we doing on time? I'm sorry, I'm not watching the clock, I am just going, so you'll have to excuse me.
In terms of Caitlin, we are fine. So if you have time to listen to Josh play.
We're good. Okay, so we're done with Caitlin's time now, is what you're saying. Okay, sorry, I was misunderstanding. I was like, great, we can keep going. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for playing. I know this is really nerve-wracking, especially online. It feels like extra scary. So don't worry, I've been there before, maybe not online, but I know the feelings of a masterclass. So great job. Thank you for playing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so Josh, if you can introduce yourself in your piece, and just an FYI for Josh, next time, maybe send the email a little sooner that you want to do the class.
Sorry about that. So I'm Josh, and I'm playing the prelude to Bach's Third Suite, and yeah.
Plan to play the whole thing. I might stop you. I probably won't, but plan to play the whole thing. Great. Thank you so much, Josh. Okay. Obviously, you guys all know by now, I'm a big fan of Bach. I think who isn't? So the first thing I have to say is thank you, thank you, thank you. 79 and 80. You played those correctly in time. Do you know how many people go? They just blow through those rests. No, you really held them. Thank you. It's the same as like the prelude to the D minor suite. Like people don't realize it's actually like M3/4, and then all of a sudden the first or the second beat has like 3 beats in it, and you're like, wait, I don't understand what it is. No, thank you so much for holding those for the proper amount of time. So I just had to say that. Great. So the word that comes to my mind when I hear Third Suite is brilliance. Like brilliant sound, bright, you know, really resonant, and I'm really hearing that from you. I want to focus on specifically on your bow in helping you sustain that kind of sound, because I really heard it at the beginning. But what I started to notice is you were adding in lots of slurs, and I'm fine with adding in slurs as long as they're not detracting from your phrase or from the rhythm. So specifically, I'm thinking about, you have measure numbers?
No.
Okay. Ooh, all right. Okay, so right before, find that spot. We're gonna count back like, well, one phrase before that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 measures before that. Yeah, exactly. So even starting from there, what I'm starting to notice with some of your slurs is it's taking the rhythm and augmenting it, so it's sounding, instead of it sounding like, what I'm hearing is, and it didn't sound like straight through, but there would be times where it would make that rhythm and it was very confusing and it would take away from the phrase. So really be cautious with your slurs. They're fine to keep them in, and of course you will spend your life experimenting with different bowings, etc. in Bach always. But if you're gonna do them, just make sure that the rhythm stays the same. You don't want it to make it sound like something completely different. That being said, you have a lot of slurs, and I would love to just hear more textures by taking some slurs out. I didn't grab my pencil in time when I was specifically thinking about that, but I think it's in all that section, and right before it, there was a lot of slurs, and I think actually you might benefit from a bit of variety in your textures there. So something just in general to think about. So let's really break this down, and let's go from there, and we'll go a few, actually we'll go through all of that. So start from the low C starts in 37, but you don't have measure numbers, it's fine.
No, sorry.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pause you right there, because this transition, you made it so much slower that it added like 3 beats to that measure. Don't let it do that. If you take time, that's fine, but you can't let it totally distort the rhythm. So you can definitely bring it out, but bring it out with color and just a little bit of timing. Don't rely on the timing. And it's always these like 4 notes that transition into another. All those, I think that's where you can really experiment with separate bows to give you different textures. But for now, let's really focus on making sure that those 4 notes leading into this next statement don't like it. You know what it did is it felt like we were like about to drive, like, you know, when in cartoons you drive off a cliff and then you soar and then you land somewhere. Kind of felt like the car just stopped and we just plummeted and then we were already going, right? So don't let yourself stop the phrase. Let it continue and get that air in that soaring sound. So you can start in the same spot if you want, the low C pedal. Okay, great. So now that you've gotten through this whole like gnarly little thumb stuff, once you're out of that, I want to hear you really be soaring with the sound. So that G pedal, you're never gonna like ignore it because it's just gonna be there. It's always gonna resonate through this. But at this point, now that you've gotten out of that, we need to like ramp up that resonance that it always seems like cellists get very tight in all this like gnarly little thumb position. But once you're out of it, you really got to let the sound just come from your cello, and you're almost there. It feels like you're not quite letting yourself let all of that kind of that resonance and that sound out. So I'm sorry, I'm going to make you go from here again to do that whole section again. Yes, keep going. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry, no, I forget that we're not in a real hall, so you can't hear me in time. I'm so sorry. I broke it off right when you were really ramping up. That was exactly what I wanted. So go again from that stretch to the high E. Yes, great. So now I'm going to add one more thing. Two measures after that stretched E, we've got minor, dark. Even though you're in the midst of this kind of like, what are these watermill things called? Like it's going, but you can still add in that somber, like very, I don't know how else to say it other than very minor. It's very minor, like, you know, that somberness, that darkness, bring it in. So really with, I know you're starting up though, because I start up there also, but really make sure that you're not just bouncing off of that G, really hearing that E flat. And that's not to do with time, that's to do with bow weight, because I know that we're like kind of chugging along and each down bow, every up bow on the G kind of propels. Let yourself sing through that G, E flat, C. In that measure, really allow yourself to do that. Same spot as before.
Oh, from the C major?
Yes.
Okay.
Or the stretch E, the beginning of that measure.
Oh, sorry.
Fair. Wait, okay, pause. Sorry, that was an example that I heard instead of I'm not sure if you heard the time distort and it sounded bizarre, and I think it was due to your slurring. So I want you to really open up your ears and be picky with yourself as you go through and explore different bowings, specifically, and they're almost always at the ends of measures.
Okay.
Just, it might be just like a habit thing, but yes. So that idea of the minor on, that was already much better. Just make sure that you're not hanging out too long on the G and still just blowing through the E flat, because the E flat is what tells you it's minor there, right? So C, E flat, G, if you were to restack it, E flat gives you the minor quality. So you don't want to blow past that E flat either. So you can bring out the G, but bring out the connection of the G to the E flat, right? So that already brought so much more like color and gravitas. Okay, let's go to I want to skip to the ending. So I want you to go from.
Okay.
And before you play, what is this? Like, what is from this measure on?
So I like to call this like the false ending. Like, oh, you made it to the tonic, you made it to C, but then it keeps going, and then you got all these diminished chords, and then you got all other types of chords, and then it's kind of escalating back up to C. That's what I think it is.
Yeah, and that's how I think of it also. My thought about it is that we've actually hit the end. We've hit the end, and we hit the end at the end of right on that downbeat, and that's measure 81. Just, I know you don't have measure numbers, but for those of us who are at home, with our, if you have scores with measure numbers. So you've already done rest, rest, which you did beautifully. Thank you. Rest, rest. That's it. And then if you think about Bach and like all of his grand organ and all of his filigree, this ending is just ornamentation on tonic. So you've already hit the end of the piece. So now this is really like a cadenza and just, as you said, leading back to tonic. But really we've ended the piece on that downbeat. So I want you to now play this false ending, the cadenza portion. I want you to play from there. And I want you to let yourself loose a little bit. I really want you to think about like being back in ye olde times. I want you to imagine like you're just a boss on the organ. You have like all these extra pedals and things you can do to pull out. I want you to really push yourself past, okay, I'm going to play this perfectly in time and in tune. I want you to really push yourself. So go from the beginning of the false ending.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, you're good. Yes, already. I want you to push yourself more because I think that there's more in there that you're not quite letting out, but that's how we always are when we try these things for the first time. But really, that's a moment for a nice, beautiful, shimmering vibrato. Really allow yourself that vibrato there. Now, of course, we don't want a distorted vibrato. We don't need one of those. We don't need a Dvorak moment. We're just a really beautiful singing vibrato on that, especially as we come out of, which I like a little bit of vibrato on this because it's just kind of an uncomfortable, crunchy chord. Vibrato. And I say, you know what, you can be perfectly in time for that second to last, that penultimate measure. I do it out of time. I'm sure every cellist you will ever meet will have a very specific thought for that. So I will leave it up to you. But I do want you to, in your practice, push yourself, be either completely rigid and then the next time really be out of time. Just like how we were talking about with Caitlin, pushing yourself to the extremes will show you what options you've got to pull from. So really, you know, see what you've got and then make your kind of decisions based on that, because I can tell you've done the analysis, or at least for this ending you have, you know, and that's so important. So one more time from the false ending, push yourself, add some vibrato that really helps brighten it up, and let's really make this ending truly brilliant because it's so close. Yes, we're already there. That vibrato on that high C was there, but it sounded a little bit tight. I really want it to be resonant, really, really resonant. So I want you to imagine like you are in a church specifically. I mean, obviously for this entire thing, because wouldn't we all love to be playing Bach in a church, but specifically for that note, instead of, I really want to, and that also comes from your right hand as well. So support the vibrato by making sure you're not pressing with your right arm into the string, right? So support that, the ringing vibrato with the bow. Does that make sense? Cool. Do it. Do we have time to do it again, Meg? Okay, great. Do it one more time from the ending again. Exactly. And then I'm gonna say the last thing. I'm so sorry. I don't know when to stop myself. Don't just do that. Really allow your bow to finish the phrase in the air. The music is still going. That ring is there. Follow through. It's a follow through, right? It would be like ridiculous, like if you see like soccer players like run into the ball and then just like kick it. Like no, they're like their leg goes like it almost looks like they're gonna fall over when those follow through kicks are so like so strong. So same thing with the bow. The bow will die, like it will kill the sound if you just let it drop. Let it ring out. Just do the last two measures. Da 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 da. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I can do that better.
Oh, I'm gonna have everything. I'm so sorry. Just don't let it zing either. Don't let it do that either. Really just like yes, that's it. Did you hear that? Could you hear the difference? I could hear it literally over these microphones. I could hear the ring that was left over. Yes, keep experimenting. Everybody in this masterclass and everybody at home, always record yourself and always push yourself to extremes because yes, the color is there now and now you can really make those decisions of what you want to do. Okay, Meg like is telling me to be quiet, I can tell. So thank you so much, Josh.
No, I'm never going to be mad as ending with especially that specific prelude. The ending for that one is always so fun. And clapping in my room by myself will never not be weird. I'm like sitting here like, Josh is amazing, Braden's amazing. And everyone walking by is just like, what's happening? But thank you so much, Marza, for this, for doing our first masterclass. And cellist, phenomenal job. One of the things I keep saying to all the conductors and all the coaches is we get to hear you guys do excerpts of solo of the Dvorak, which is funny you mentioned Dvorak because they just finished recording New World.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so hearing you guys do excerpts and everything like that is fun, but hearing you get to do solo stuff and hearing what you're working on individually and speaking to your musical identity is always such a fun experience. And getting to work with people like Marza makes it even more special, who gets to put it more into context for us. So Marza, thank you for this.
No, thank you. And I if I have the time, I would love to just say like a parting message to everybody.
Yeah.
The world that you're living in right now is so bizarre. And I know just as well as you do how hard it is to self-motivate to pick up the instrument and just practice. We are in such a weird limbo of what is happening in the world. And the fact that you guys keep this the love for music and like the passion alive to practice your instrument is really something you should all be proud of. The work that you brought in today was really phenomenal, each and every one of you. I hope that I gave you some things to at least think about and really just contemplate. You do not have to take my ideas, but I just encourage you to try them. And that's with every masterclass you have going forward, every conductor you work with, every chamber coach, every teacher. You know, we give you the tools, you can curate your toolbox, things like that. But I just want to really applaud you all for the work that you're doing in this time. You should be proud of just picking up your instrument every day because it is not easy. I know I can tell you that like from personal experience. So bravo to all of you for all of the work that you did. Meg, I'm sure that you have to like quit the live or whatever, but if anybody has questions, I am available to answer questions. And if there are no questions, I won't be offended either. So bravo, all cellists. Thank you so